Welcome to Roll Credits, where movie lovers get the trivia they didn't know they needed. And just a quick disclaimer, this podcast was created with help from AI tools, so double check any quotes before you drop trivia at your next movie night.
Yeah, always a good policy to verify before you brag to your friends.
Right, exactly. So today we're diving into The Housemaid. And did you know many of the film's biggest twists were kept secret, even from parts of the cast during filming?
Which is just wild to think about, considering how intricate the plot is.
Totally. And before we get into it, drop a comment and let us know what movie or show we should cover next, old or new.
I'm really excited for this one. For anyone who hasn't seen it yet, I'll give a quick, spoiler-light synopsis. It basically follows this woman, Millie, who takes a job as a housemaid for a super wealthy family, only to uncover some really disturbing secrets beneath the surface.
Yeah, it sounds like a standard premise, but the execution is just, it's incredible. Paul Feig directed the 2025 cinematic adaptation of Frida McFadden's viral novel, and they turned a $35 million budget into a $300 million box office juggernaut.
That kind of return on investment is just staggering, right?
Right.
Especially today, when theaters are dominated by these massive CGI-heavy blockbusters. This is a movie that relies entirely on, practical locations and slow-burn psychological warfare.
Exactly. So to figure out how they pulled it off, we've gathered a ton of sources. We're looking at film reviews, production notes, deep dive architectural analyses of the sets, and behind-the-scenes interviews.
There's a lot of really great material to go through.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to look beyond just the plot. We want to understand exactly how this film manipulates you, the audience, through set design, subtle acting choices, and some major deviations from the book.
And if we're talking about manipulation, we really have to start with the most imposing character in the whole movie, the Winchester house itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Because before we even analyze the characters, the predators and the prey, we need to look at the physical cage that traps them.
Yeah, and director Paul Feig had this brilliant core concept for the space. He pitched the visual tone to his team as a Nancy Meyers movie gone horribly wrong.
Which is such a perfect thesis statement. Think about Nancy Meyers movies like The Holiday or
Yeah.
It's Complicated.
Those impossible, gorgeous kitchens.
Exactly. They're famous for these immaculate, super cozy, upper-middle-class interiors. They basically signal absolute domestic bliss. So by using that comforting aesthetic, Feig sets this subconscious trap for you.
You feel totally relaxed.
Right, which means you are completely unprepared when the floor drops out from under you.
It's so smart. And they found the perfect location for the exterior, too. It's this 1909 estate in Madison, New Jersey at 158 Green Avenue.
Beautiful place.
Gorgeous. But once you move inside, the production designer, Elizabeth Jones, and cinematographer John Schwartzman did something really clever with that quiet luxury trend.
Yeah, they made it feel almost aggressive.
Yes. The spaces are so bright and pristine, just blindingly white and cream. It feels sterile.
It does. But then, to keep the audience slightly on edge, they peppered the set with these sudden, jarring accents of red.
Like the front door.
Right. The bright red front door, the deep red cushions in the salon, and of course Andrew's all-red private screening room, which is completely forbidden to Millie.
It's like a Venus flytrap. It's beautiful, it smells sweet, but once you're inside, it just snaps shut on you.
And you really feel that in the verticality of the house. The spatial design is so claustrophobic.
Oh, totally. You have this vast, airy main floor where they project their perfect lives, but then Millie's room in the attic is tiny.
They actually built a false ceiling on the soundstage for her room.
Wait, really?
Yeah. By lowering the ceiling, they forced the cameras to use tighter angles, making the space feel incredibly heavy and oppressive.
That is such a cool detail. And then down below, you have Andrew's off-limits basement. So the house is basically a map of the power dynamics.
Exactly. The patriarch commands the hidden depths, the facade is on the main floor, and the servant is literally squashed up into the roof.
And Andrew's need for control is everywhere, like that miniature replica of the house he builds.
The dollhouse. Yeah, that motif perfectly positions Andrew as this orchestrator. He basically views his family and Millie as dolls to be perfectly arranged.
He even does it with the artwork. He has those massive, perfectly framed portraits of their daughter Cecilia performing ballet.
Which is hilarious because the movie explicitly shows us that she is a terrible dancer.
Right. But Andrew rejects reality because he's obsessed with the curated perception. But I have to push back for a second here.
Sure, go for it.
If the house is a Venus flytrap and the warning signs are everywhere, the sterile rooms, the creepy dollhouse, the forbidden basement, why doesn't Millie just turn around and leave?
See, that is exactly what the film wants you to ask. because it forces us to look at the class dynamics at play. It's all about the mechanics of desperation.
Because she's literally living in her car when she takes the job.
Exactly. She's an ex-convict. She has zero safety net. She's out of options. The film uses the physical space to highlight this huge power imbalance. When you have nothing, a warm, beautiful cage still looks like a shelter.
Wow, yeah, her desperation gives her a survival blind spot.
Precisely. The trap isn't just the house, it's her own lack of alternatives.
But the trap only works because of the predators inside it, right? Which brings us to the psychological environment created by the actors. Let's talk about Amanda Seyfried as Nina.
Oh, her performance is a masterclass in calibrating unease.
It really is. And Paul Feig gave her this very specific direction called the too long stare.
Right. It's such a simple but brilliant tool. In normal conversation, there's a rhythm. You know, we nod, we react, we smile at expected intervals.
Yeah, a natural back and forth.
Feig completely disrupted that rhythm. Before Nina reacts to a question, Seyfried just holds this blank, unblinking gaze for an unnervingly long time.
It's agonizing. You're sitting there like, is she glitching? Is she about to scream? And then she just breaks into a warm smile. Feig called it the comedy of unease.
It really is funny, but in a deeply uncomfortable way.
Like that scene where Millie walks into the kitchen and Nina presents her with this massive, absurd pile of bacon.
Oh my God, yes.
And Sydney Sweeney just deadpans. You're trying to kill us.
That laugh you get from the audience there is purely the release of built-up tension. And the way Feig directed these scenes is fascinating. He's known for not over-rehearsing.
Right.
Instead, he would shoot 6 to 10 takes of the same scene, but he'd tell Seyfried to radically change her attitude for each one.
So in one take, she's super sweet, and in another, she's just totally unhinged.
Exactly. He called it feeding the editing room. It gave the editors total control over the pacing. If test audiences turned on Nina too early, they could just swap in a slightly sweeter take and dial her meanness down.
They were literally engineering our emotional response frame by frame.
It was fascinating here is how the film exploits our cultural biases to pull it off.
Because we're primed to doubt the erratic emotional wife.
Exactly. We've been conditioned by decades of media to see her as the villain and to implicitly trust the calm, handsome husband who is just trying to manage her.
Which perfectly sets up Brendan Sklenar as Andrew. This is a brilliant example of intertextual casting.
Right. For anyone unfamiliar, that's when a director purposely uses an actor's past roles to mess with your expectations.
Because Sklenar just played Atlas and It Ends With Us.
Exactly. In that movie, he is the ultimate savior, the protective guy who helps a woman escape domestic abuse.
So you walk into The Housemaid carrying that baggage.
You do. His rugged sincerity is weaponized as misdirection. You inherently trust him. So when the twist hits and you realize he's actually this sadistic abuser, the betrayal just cuts twice as deep.
It's so good. And anchoring all of this is Sydney Sweeney.
She plays the innocent victim so well, but she never actually loses her agency. She's always observing.
She anchors the audience's confusion. When she's confused, we're confused. And when you put an audience in that kind of pressure cooker, here's where it gets really interesting. The theater reactions were insane.
Oh, people were getting so rowdy, screaming, cheering, yelling at the screen.
It really channeled that 90s erotic noir energy, like Fatal Attraction or Basic Instinct.
Exactly. The movie spends 2 acts suffocating you with gaslighting, so when the violence finally erupts, it's just this primal, cathartic release.
And speaking of tension, a lot of it comes from the intimate scenes, which Feig actually felt super uncomfortable filming.
Right. His background is comedy, not erotic thrillers.
Sweeney and Seyfried even joked that he was sweating more than they were.
Which is pretty funny. But his anxiety actually led to a great cinematic choice. He brought in intimacy coordinator Lizzie Talbot and basically handed the power over to the actors.
And it allowed them to shoot those scenes in a really untraditional way. They focus on microscopic details, hands grasping sheets, strained faces instead of wide graphic shots.
They entirely avoided the male gaze. It wasn't about titillation. It was about power and vulnerability, making it feel incredibly invasive.
And then there's the lighting in the climax. Instead of the usual spooky, dark, horror movie attic, Feig shot it in harsh, bright sunlight.
Which is so much scarier. In the dark, your brain fills in the gaps. But harsh sunlight forces you to look at the reality of the monster.
Trauma in broad daylight is profoundly unsettling.
It really is. And the climax itself is a huge point of discussion because the movie is way more brutal than the book.
Oh, fundamentally different. Let's look at the punishments. In the book, Andrew makes Millie balance heavy textbooks on her stomach.
Which is crude, but mostly psychological endurance.
Right. But in the movie, he forces her to carve 21 gashes into her own stomach with a broken plate.
It instantly escalates the stakes from psychological survival to literal bleeding out physical survival.
And the escape tool changes too. Nina sneaks pepper spray into the attic in the book, but a cake knife in the movie?
Forcing a legal choice.
Exactly. Because in the book, Andrew gets locked in the attic and slowly dies of dehydration over 5 days.
Right.
In the movie, she stabs him, forces him to pull a tooth with pliers, and pushes him down a massive spiral staircase. And then Nina drops a chandelier bulb on him to fake an accident.
It is a massive departure.
So I have to ask, does changing a slow, creepy death into this fast, violent action movie staircase fall betray the novel's core theme? Or is it just necessary for a movie?
I really think it's a necessary evolution for the medium. If we connect this to the bigger picture, cinema demands visual spectacle. A guy dehydrating over 5 days halts the momentum.
That's true.
But more importantly, the staircase fall gives Millie a definitive moment of transition. In that violent act, she goes from prey to predator. It cements her agency.
And honestly, Frida McFadden publicly stated she liked the movie ending better for that exact reason.
Yep.
But the biggest twist of all isn't the murder, it's Nina.
Yes. The reveal that Nina wasn't just a passive victim.
She profiled Millie. She knew her husband had a twisted savior complex, so she purposely found a desperate ex-con to fit the bill. She weaponized the patriarchy against him to stage her own rescue.
Which is why the too long stare is so brilliant in retrospect. It wasn't a woman having a breakdown. It was a woman executing a high-stakes tactical operation.
It totally changes the movie on a rewatch.
Right.
And it sets up the ending perfectly, which drops all these Easter eggs for a wider universe.
The pivot into franchise territory is remarkably smooth.
Like at the funeral, when Andrew's mother, played by Elizabeth Perkins, casually mentions she used to pull Andrew's baby teeth with pliers. She says, "Teeth are a privilege."
It's a devastating line. It shows the abuse is generational.
And then the final scene. Millie is interviewing for a new job, and she notices the woman interviewing her has bruised wrists.
Right, shifting the genre entirely. Millie and Nina are running an underground railroad for abused women now. It becomes a vigilante procedural.
And the music perfectly underscores it. Ending with Lana Del Rey's Cinnamon Girl and cutting straight into Taylor Swift's I Did Something Bad, the victim era is over.
And we're already getting a sequel, The Housemaid's Secret, in December 2027, with Kirsten Dunst joining the cast.
I cannot wait for that. Oh, a fun piece of trivia before we wrap up. Amanda Seyfried didn't even know she was an executive producer on the film until she showed up on set. Her agent negotiated it without telling her.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
And the international marketing is wild. Do you know what the title was in Taiwan?
What was it?
Domestic Murder Service.
Well, that certainly skips the subtext.
It really does. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Next time you watch a thriller, pay attention to the lighting, the architecture, and the silence. Because the real manipulation happens before the monster even reveals itself.
Exactly. And it leaves you with a lingering thought about Millie. The Winchester house was a physical manifestation of Andrew's need for control. Millie survived the trap, but by becoming a vigilante, by infiltrating other people's toxic houses, is she actually escaping the cycle? Or has she just volunteered to move into a new cage of her own making?
Wow. That is a heavy thought to leave off on. And that wraps our deep dive into The Housemaid. If you enjoyed unraveling this tense psychological story, follow roll credits and share it with your fellow thriller fans. And don't forget to drop a comment with what movie or show we should cover next, old or new. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and maybe a few more secrets behind closed doors. Stay curious.